Dear viewer, I welcome you to this lesson for Social Studies Primary 7, which is our candidate class. And today we are going to have a continuation from our previous discussion. Remember, we were looking at the rivers that we have in Africa, that is in our previous lesson. And we also looked at after understanding those examples of rivers, we went ahead to give what we call the multi-purpose river projects. We said the multi-purpose river projects, we are having a river being used for very many purposes. I believe you learned that in our previous lesson. In case you missed that lesson, make sure you go and look for it and subscribe so that you can have that knowledge, because it's what will help you to understand what we are going to share right now. So, we don't want to go back to what we looked at, but we are going to look at these rivers that we have with their multi-purpose river projects which are built on them or which are set up on them. Remember, we are still in that line. So today we are going to begin by understanding River Nile, and we find this on our page 63. For us who are using workbooks, in case you have your workbook, go to page 63. That is where we are having our discussion from. If you have not yet got a booklet, make sure you find ways of approaching the school. They have lifted the lockdown, so at least mommy and daddy can drive to school and can pick for you the booklets. Now, River Nile is not new to our ears. That one I'm so sure. We learned about this some time back. Now, when it comes to River Nile, remember, this is the longest river that we have in Uganda. Leave alone that, it is the longest river that we have in Africa, and it's the longest river that we have in the whole world. So which means we are blessed as Ugandans. We have the longest river beginning its flow from our country. So which means we are going to understand that this river is locally known as Chira. That is the local name, Chira. The time we're looking at the others. This one is locally known as Chira, and we are saying that it has its source in Uganda. Remember, we understood this. We say in rivers we have what we call the source, and then we have the mouth. I want you to remember this. I hope you have not yet forgotten. What is a source of a river? We said a source is where a river starts flowing from. And then we have the mouth, that is where a river puts or pours its water. Don't forget this. So we are saying its source is in Uganda. Now, where in Uganda? Of course, it has to be a water body. It has to be, the other time we're looking at sources of rivers. We say some rivers begin flowing from lakes. Some rivers start flowing from mountain areas. Some rivers start flowing from swamps. This very one we are talking about starts flowing from a lake that we take as Lake Victoria. So when we are asked for the source, if it is asking for the water body, there are two things here. There is a country and then there is a water body. So it depends on the question. If the question is saying which country or in which country do we find a source of River Nile, then you can't again write Lake Victoria. Will that be a country? The answer is automatically no. So you write according to the question. The source is in Uganda as a country. In which water body? Lake Victoria. And its mouth, that is where it pours the water, is in Egypt. Egypt is a country. Now, where in Egypt? In which water body in Egypt? In the Mediterranean Sea. That is what you need to understand. Mediterranean, always write with double R. Mediterranean Sea. So that is where this river pours its water. I believe you have understood the difference between a country and a water body. As a candidate, you have to be very, very careful with the things, because they are the ones that make us not to score highly. But once we understand them like that, then our subject becomes very easy. We shall be just shooting highly. One thing we also said is that this river, when it flows through those countries, it flows from Uganda, and we say from Uganda it goes to to South Sudan. From South Sudan it flows to Sudan. From Sudan it goes to Egypt. Then it now delivers the water into the Mediterranean Sea. Before pouring the water, we say that rivers behave in two ways. There are those rivers that end by forming a delta. Then there are those that widen, forming what we call an estuary. So for this particular one, River Nile forms a delta. So we are also having our sentence saying it ends with a delta, meaning it splits into several streams as it pours its water into its mouth. That is what we call a delta. We continue understanding this. We have said this river begins flowing from Uganda, that is in Lake Victoria, which means if we were to have our map of Uganda drawn, you would find that it begins from Lake Victoria, which you will find somewhere here. And it flows northwards. It goes to Lake Choga, it continues to Lake Albert. Then it goes northwards. It enters Sudan, means South Sudan. It goes to Sudan, then finally Egypt. So we are saying the flow of the river is in that it moves or it flows northwards. This can be a question to you. Use an arrow, indicate the flow of River Nile. And you are having the river flowing like this. The river is flowing like. Your work is only to put the arrow like that. And you get a tick, as I have done in this map. So that is what we need to take care of when we are writing, or we need to be careful with when writing about this. So we have a reason. We say River Nile flows northwards. Why? Uganda's plateau is tilted towards the north. Or you can simply say the northern part of Uganda is on a lower altitude. Of course, we have rivers. We say rivers flow from high areas or areas of a higher altitude to areas of a lower altitude, which means this northern part of Uganda is on a lower altitude. That's why the river flows northwards. I have answered another question that you can be asked. Now, we also learned about tributaries in our previous lessons. When we were introducing rivers, we had those terms that are associated with rivers. We say we have what we call tributaries. If it is one, we shall call it a tributary. And we said a tributary is that small river that joins the main one, which means a small river which pours its water to the main river. So we are going to be looking at these small rivers that bring their water and they join River Nile as the main river. In Uganda, we have River Achwa. We have River Achwa. The map that I have rubbed, you will find that if we are to locate River Achwa, you would have the Nile flowing like this, and we have River Achwa coming like this. So that is River Achwa. You find it brings its water and joins the main river, that is now River Nile. So we have River Achwa, then we have the Atbara River and the Blue Nile. Both rivers are in Sudan. I mean, they join River Nile in Sudan. So you'll find that as our river goes somewhere in Sudan here, you'll find you shall be having another river that comes from Ethiopia. That is the Blue Nile. It has its source, that is in Lake Tana in Ethiopia. It comes bringing its water and it pours its water here. So this is what we call the Blue Nile. So it also forms another tributary. The main tributary in the flow of this river is this. For us in Uganda, we say River Achwa is the main tributary of River Nile in Uganda. But when you look at the whole flow of River Nile, we take the Blue Nile as the main tributary of that river. So if we were to show our river, we will have it moving till it reaches Egypt, where it forms a delta, as we say that it ends with a delta. Of course, now here you will be having now the Mediterranean Sea. So we are illustrating the flow of our river like that. Now, before we go to that, let's first look at the parts of this river. Let's first add the parts here. Let's add the parts of River Nile. Parts of River Nile. Before we look at the next subheading, let's first understand these parts. Which means when this river flows, it is divided in two parts. As we were trying to understand it here, we said it begins flowing from Lake Victoria that we find here. This is Lake Victoria. This river flows and enters Lake Choga that we find here. And this part of the Nile from Victoria to Choga is the one we call the Victoria Nile. Victoria Nile. It continues from Lake Choga up to Lake Albert. We shall be having Lake Albert here. Still, this part is also called the Victoria Nile. Some children mess up here. The river from Lake Victoria up to Lake Albert, that is the Victoria Nile. When it leaves Albert, up this border here between Uganda and South Sudan, we have it called the Albert Nile. Albert Nile. So that is the second part. Now, on leaving Uganda, it forms what we call the White Nile. This is now the White Nile. The White Nile is not a river, but it is part of River Nile. We need to understand that. Sometimes children think White Nile is also a river of its own. No, that is just part of River Nile. So our last is the White Nile. That we are saying it runs from the border up to Egypt. So if a question is asking us, which is the longest part of River Nile out of the three, Victoria Nile, Albert Nile, White Nile, which one is the longest? Of course, we shall be seeing that the longest part now is this one, which forms the White Nile. So this is the longest part of River Nile. The longest part of River Nile. So these are the parts of River Nile in case a question is asked. Now, after understanding these parts, we are going to also look at what we mean by the Nile Valley countries. Nile Valley countries. Nile Valley countries as our next subheading. Now, what we mean by the Nile Valley countries, we are now going to look at countries. We have three things here. We have countries through which River Nile flows, its tributaries, and the distributaries. Three things. That's why we are saying these are countries through which River Nile and its tributaries flow. I think it is something that you can understand. Countries through which River Nile and its tributaries and distributaries flow. Which means we are going to be looking at countries through which River Nile flows. Not only those, we also look at countries that are having the tributaries, that is rivers that join River Nile, and also those that are having distributaries, I mean the rivers that are taking water away from River Nile. All those are the ones we call Nile Valley countries. Now, when you are asked to list the examples of these Nile Valley countries, don't get lost. I want you to take the first ones that we have written here: Uganda, South Sudan, Egypt. Now, that first line is giving us the countries which are directly flown or crossed by River Nile. I mean countries through which River Nile flows. For example, we say the river begins from Uganda. That's why we are having our Uganda here. It goes to South Sudan. So we shall be having South Sudan here. From South Sudan, it goes to Sudan. And then we finally have Egypt. That's why we are having that line. And then now we have the tributaries and the distributaries. We have Democratic Republic of Congo. We have Burundi, Rwanda, Kenya, Tanzania, and we have Ethiopia. Remember, we have been talking about the Blue Nile, which begins flowing from Ethiopia, which means that is how such countries also become part of the Nile Valley countries, because they have, or they are where these tributaries of River Nile begin flowing from. So, those are the ones we call the Nile Valley countries. There are 10. Then we also go to look at the main dams. Remember, we said we are looking at the multi-purpose river projects. I mean, which projects are set up on rivers. Now, on River Nile, we have the multi-purpose project of, actually we are having mainly, there are many. We have irrigation. We shall be looking at Gezira irrigation when time comes. I'm glad you learned about irrigation in primary 5. We have generation of hydroelectric power. We have fishing on River Nile. And we also have transport, that is on some parts of River Nile. Remember, we say that most parts of River Nile, more so the Victoria Nile, I mean from Lake Victoria up to Lake Albert. This part of the Nile is not safe or is not good for navigation, that is water transport. The reason we say this part here has got a lot of waterfalls. Secondly, it has fast flowing water. Remember when we are looking at the stages of the river, at the upper stage of the river, the water flows very fast. So that is also another thing that makes, another reason that makes transport very difficult here. And the water forms rapids as it flows. So for those reasons, this part of the Nile is not safe for transport. However, other parts can be a little okay. So here we are looking at the multi-purpose river projects, and we are looking at the dams built. And these dams are built mainly for generation of hydroelectric power, as we are having here. We have Nalubale Power Dam, that we can also write as Nalubale Power Station, that we are saying that was formerly known as Owen Falls Dam. So we have it today called Nalubale Power Station or Nalubale Power Dam. And then we have the Chira Dam. All these, both of these are in Uganda. And then we have the Sena Dam. This one we shall be looking at it when we come to look at irrigation. That is at the Gezira irrigation scheme. That will be our next. We shall be looking at that with time to come, still in our primary 7 class. And then we have the Aswan High Dam built in Egypt. That is for generation of electricity or hydroelectric power. Then we have the Osiris Dam, still also in Egypt, together with the Sena Dam. So these ones are the dams which are built along that river, that is River Nile. Because we have talked about these dams, for example, the ones in Uganda, we say Uganda generates electricity, and most of the electricity is generated from this Nalubale power station. And you will find that this electricity is made as an export. Remember, you must have learned about the invisible exports of Uganda, meaning the things that Uganda exports. We can't see electricity, we only see the wires and the poles. But what is that power, we can't see it. So we call it an invisible export of Uganda. So Uganda exports that electricity to countries like Kenya, Rwanda, Tanzania, and then we have Democratic Republic of Congo. Of course, this is to help the country to generate what we call government revenue. That is the money that is to support the country. So that is about River Nile, that is generation of hydroelectric power. we move to our next heading, whereby we are going to be looking at the problems which are caused by River Nile, which means we are looking at which problems are associated with this river. Because of this river, floods can come in. Of course, here I mean water getting out of the river and pouring the neighboring areas, and it can destroy people's property like houses, crops, the animals, and any other projects that people can be trying to set up in such areas. And then also, this river, of course, being a water body, it inhabits this aquatic life, aquatic animals, which can be dangerous to people. Like we have these snakes that live in water, we have the crocodiles, and any other aquatic animal which can be dangerous to people. It is also another danger or another problem. And then we have the sands, that is the floating vegetation. Floating vegetation on the river. It also becomes a challenge. That is when people want to do their activities like fishing and so on, the vegetation is there. Then after looking at the problems that are caused by River Nile, we also need to we also have problems that the river can be facing. And these problems are now caused by the people. Can be people or by nature. When we look at such problems, that's when we shall be looking at poor disposal, that is dumping of wastes into the river. So there we have two things. We have problems that are that are caused by the river, and then we have the problems that a river can be facing as a water body. Like we have talked about pollution, of course that is now dumping waste materials into the water bodies, and this one is done by the people mainly. And then we also have a problem that is called silting. Silting is not a new term to us. We simply say silting is the deposition of materials into a water body. For example, you find that after raining, you find rain moves or carries some sand and dumps it in a trench at home there. That is what we call silting. So it makes us to note that sometimes such materials can be brought and deposited into a river by nature. That's why I say nature. That can be by rain, because that's nature. And when it happens, you will find that the materials deposited will make the river shallow, and it will affect its flow. And also we have this vegetation, that is the sands. It also affects the flow of a river. So those are the problems that rivers face, to add on problems that rivers cause. I hope you have understood that point well. For that we go and we look at yet another river that we have in Africa, and that is what we call River Zambezi. River Zambezi. We are saying River Zambezi begins flowing from northern Zambia and Angolan Plateau. It flows through Mozambique and it makes a delta that is at its mouth, that is in the Indian Ocean. So we shall find that most rivers in East Africa or in Africa flow towards, we have those rivers that flow towards the east. They flow towards the Indian Ocean. The reason simply is that we go back to the other knowledge that we had. Rivers begin flowing from the areas of a higher altitude to those of a lower altitude, which means as these rivers flow towards the Indian Ocean, it simply means that the Indian Ocean is on a lower altitude, as simple as that. And then we are saying it has what we call the Victoria Falls. I want you to understand here, there is always a challenge by some candidates in that when the children see Victoria, children run back to River Nile because of its source being in Lake Victoria. But we have in Africa what we call the Victoria Falls. The Victoria Falls are found, that is, on River Zambezi. They can be asking you such a question. On which African river are the Victoria Falls? Now for you, by you seeing Victoria, you run, you say Victoria, that is in Uganda, it means that's now River Nile, and you fail it like that. So these waterfalls were named by Dr. David Livingstone. I believe you now remember that knowledge, that lesson of primary 6, when you were learning about these explorers. We said we had some explorers who were having also other, like they were explorers, they were missionaries, they were like this very gentleman. We say Dr. David Livingstone, he was an explorer, number one. He was a missionary who preached the word of God, number two, as well as a doctor who treated people from those diseases like malaria and so on. So that's why he even has the title doctor. So this person, when he was doing the side of exploration, that is on the side of being an explorer, to break it, you will find that he named this Victoria. Now, who was this Victoria? Remember, Victoria was the Queen of England at that time. And you must have learned in those classes that most of our physical features were given names from those European countries, the names of prominent or powerful people from Europe at that time. That's why we are able to have that. So I believe you have understood the difference between this. Don't say Victoria Falls are now on Lake Victoria. I mean, they are on the River Nile because of Victoria. No. You need to get that. We have the dams which are built, and these dams are also for generation of hydroelectric power. We have the Kariba Dam, Kafue Dam, and we have the Kahora Bassa Dam, that is in Mozambique. So these are the dams which are built along that river. I want you to make adjustments. You have the Kabora, it can be written as Kahora Bassa Dam. And then you have the Kariba Dam, Kafue Dam. You can be asked these questions. On which African river is the Kariba Dam built? They can ask you any of these dams. So you make sure you have understood this, and it will not again be a problem or a challenge to you. So that is about River Zambezi. Next is we are going to be looking at River Niger as our next river that we are going to discuss about. So we are discussing another river, that is the Niger River, that we can also call River Niger, that we are saying it starts flowing from the Futa Jalon Plateau in Guinea. It flows through Nigeria, shall have Nigeria here, and it takes its water into the Atlantic Ocean. So this is our Atlantic Ocean, which means the source of, the mouth of River Niger is in the Atlantic Ocean. That's where it pours its water. And what we are saying that before it pours its water, it forms what? A delta. And that delta is the one we call the Niger Delta. Now, when we look at the map of Africa, you will find that the diagram that we are having on our page 64 is just a cut-out diagram from this map of Africa. You'll find that they just cut this part, only this part here, to show you that Niger Delta. But I have brought the whole such that you'll be able to tell where that Niger Delta is found. There is something which is very important about this Niger Delta, in that when we look at this, we shall also be able to note that this Niger Delta is having a lot of things. One, we are saying it has the oil deposits, which means when we come to look at the economic activities that can be carried out or that can be done in this Niger Delta, you will find that we have, because of the mineral deposits which are found at the delta, there is mining due to the oil deposits. And then, of course, a delta people tour. So you will find that tourism becomes another economic activity. And then the delta, we have the fertile soil because of the rain received. So the soil around the delta is fertile, supporting crop growing. So we have also farming now there. And then we have trade also taking place. The ports, we are saying the major ports, meaning Nigeria. We are not looking at Nigeria. Nigeria is not a landlocked country. It has ports, like we have Port Harcourt here, Port Harcourt. And we have also Port Lagos. So we are having the Niger Delta drawn like this. This is a question which is always asked in our primary 7 class. So you need to get to understand it right now. such that it does not disturb you. When we come to the importance of the Niger Delta, we look at the economic activities. Importance number one, we are saying it has the oil deposits that promote what? Mining. Number two, it can attract tourists who bring income to that country. Then we have, it has the fertile soil. We said at the delta, we have the fertile soil for crop growing. So those are the advantages or the importance of the Niger Delta. Also, what we need to note is that we have what we call the Busa Falls. The Busa Falls, built on River Niger, Busa Falls. And when we continue learning in our candidate class, time will come when we shall realize that there was an explorer. Remember, for us in P6 downwards, we were looking at the explorers who came to East Africa, then those who came to Uganda in P5. But we not talk about other parts of Africa, like now that is West Africa. So when it comes to that time, when we shall be looking at those explorers, we shall be talking about Mungo Park. Mungo Park. Mungo Park. This was an explorer who drowned at these falls, that is Busa Falls, that is along the along the Niger River. So in case a question is asked to you, yes, in case a question is asking you, you will just tell, like question is asking on which river are the Busa Falls located. You say the Busa Falls are along the Niger Delta. The Niger River. That is about the Niger River. Then I want us to talk about the last river as per now, due to time. That is about River Congo. We have it on page 65. It tells us that this river starts flowing from the equatorial rainforests, that is in the Democratic Republic of Congo. River Congo. We shall be ending with this as our last subheading. River Congo. We are saying this river has its source, that is in the equatorial rainforests. Equatorial rainforests. Remember when we were in the downer classes, we said this kind of forests are called equatorial rainforests. Reason being, they are in areas that receive a lot of rain, or they are found growing in areas that receive a lot of rainfall. So we have it, we have the river beginning flowing from there. And this river has got many tributaries. We have Kasai, tributaries of River Congo, tributaries. We have Kasai and Banj, that is among others. So what we shall be able to understand is that this is the river in Africa which carries the largest volume of water. It is the river which carries the largest volume of water, and it forms an estuary. This one is not like for River Nile and River Niger that were forming deltas. This one forms an estuary, meaning as the river comes flowing like this, it widens. That is how we understood an estuary. It widens, that wide mouth of the river, as it now pours its water to its mouth. So the river forms an estuary as it pours its water to its mouth. Then we also need to give which are the reasons as to why this river carries large volumes of water. Why does it carry large volumes of water than any other African river? The answer is, we have already given number one. When we look at the source, the river starts flowing from areas that receive heavy rain. That is, areas that receive a lot of rainfall. So, which means even when they are flowing, even when this river is flowing, it now carries large volumes of water. So reason number one, it starts flowing, the river starts flowing from areas that have, let's say, that receive a lot of rainfall. And which areas are these? We are saying it begins flowing from the equatorial rainforest. Then also the other second reason is this river is joined on the way on its flow. This river is joined by many tributaries. Which means during the flow of this river, there are many other tributaries that pour their water into this river. At the end of it all, the river carries large volumes of water than any other African river. That is about River Congo. So in case you're asked of such a question or such questions, I believe we have prepared ourselves to face them. Thank you so much, dear candidates, for viewing this lesson. I believe it's going to help you to sail through our Primary 7 candidate class as we prepare ourselves for Primary Leaving Examination, that is PLE. May God bless you in your journey.